Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we are finally going to be talking about the newest album from Courtney Marie Andrews called Honest Life. So this review has been entirely too long in coming, yet it's almost kind of fitting that we'd round out the end of the year with a record that I had every expectation would be great. Hell, in a year full of strong country, especially in the indie scene, especially leaning towards folk, and especially coming from incredibly sharp female singer-songwriters, it's almost kind of karmic that we circle back to a record like this one for the end of this year. And I had every expectation that I would love this. In my research, I couldn't really find copies of Courtney Marie Andrews' entire discography, but what I did find was heartfelt, organic, melodic, and with a plain-spoken power that was hard to deny. And yet, the most that some people would ever recognize her for was background work she did with Ryan Adams in Jimmy Eat World of all people. Of course, her voice is distinctive enough that she'd be recognizable even there. A lilting, slightly deeper and huskier tone that reminded me a little of Joni Mitchell or maybe Joanna Newsom early on before her tones got richer with age. She really sounds great here. And with this being her first album since 2013, and with the considerable amount of critical acclaim it's received, I had every expectation and hope that I would love this album. That'd be excellent at the very least. So, was I right? Oh man, I wish I was. Folks, I've had this album on repeat between churning through my backlog for the past week, and I wish that I could say I loved it more. Make no mistake, it's definitely a very good album, and against less impressive competition this year, I could see this maybe having a little bit more staying power for me, but something really isn't quite clicking here as deeply as I would like, and I think I finally understand what this is. Honest Life is a good album, but it's not a great one, especially in 2016. So let's start off with the biggest positive right out of the gate: Courtney Marie Andrews herself. I've already spoken her praises at the beginning of this review, and they're all the more true with this record. Capable of expressive earnestness, considerable bitterness, and one of the most delicately powerful expressions of heartbreak by the time we get to the closing track, Only in My Mind, by far the best song here. She doesn't exactly have huge power, but the very intimate presentation and vocal pickup means that she doesn't really need it. And the sparse backing vocals that show up for a bit of support do an ample job where they're needed. And a lot of the instrumentation falls into comfortable territory as well. Clean acoustic grooves against piano and pedal steel, some firmer bass lines, and the occasional organ welling up or electric guitar solo. It's a pretty short listen, all things considered, only 10 songs, but the tempos make the songs feel longer and more languid, a little bit more to elaborate and flesh out the melodies, which will sneak up on you more than anything. A lot of these kind of grew on me, and there are some great accent moments here too. I love the piano chords that come up after the chorus of Rookie Dreamin', the deeper bass and guitar holding Irene that shift into some of the minor tones on Table for One, the more straightforward pedal steel and country touches on How Quickly Your Heart Mends, and especially the piano and strings that flesh out Only in My Mind. So beautiful there. Now, if I were to raise any complaints about the instrumentation, it'd be that many of these tracks feel a tad underwritten, especially for their tempo and their vibe, and that the more languid instrumental segments don't really do a lot to shift things up or really impress me with any solos. And that's not even touching how the production to the majority of these songs can feel a tad cloying at points, a little bit too soft and rounded. That's before you get songs like 15 Highway Lines, where the drum progression tries to build up to the hook and it ends up feeling a little messier than it should. Not really my favorite song here, probably the weakest. But this is where we have to talk about the lyrics and themes and where I kind of struggled the most with this album, which you might think is kind of odd considering I previously stated that it felt underwritten. But that's more because Honest Life by Courtney Marie Andrews is the sort of record I don't often hear these days. Certainly not for somebody who is younger than me. The Settling Down album. It might start off with her on the road and tours that take her around the world, but with the acknowledgement that the lifestyle is wreaking havoc on her personal life, she opts to find that special spot and land for a little while because there's no place like home. Now let me start by saying that for the most part, this record can hold that narrative together. Rookie Dreamin' shows how experience tempers one's chase of their own dreams. How Quickly Your Heart Mends has her showing up dressed to the nines to meet an old flame in a different town, presumably internationally, only to get stood up by this guy. So when the jukebox starts playing an old country song, she stands up to dance with the rest of the drunks because what else the hell is she supposed to do here? Hell, even Irene has her imparting lessons to a fellow traveler on the road to chase those dreams but keep a good head on your shoulders. But by the time we hit the title track, this record seems to be ready to settle down in one spot, and it starts picking up a pastoral quality that feels a tad too idealistic, even if it is contrasted with the grit of the road on the songs like Table for One. Hell, that's why Only in My mind works at all for me. She imagines that romance only to realize that her own choices, flaws, and mistakes led to a lonely reality right now, and any forgiveness and reconciliation is only in her mind. Even if she did want to settle down, that other person isn't there. Now that's some potent stuff with real self-aware framing, but that's not self-aware framing that's consistent across this album. Let the Good One Go has her pining for an ex where she was hoping to see shades of gray in the breakup and hoping that he'd call, have something there. But by the time you get to the final verse, it reads as much more idealistic and naive, searching for true love than we know that she is. And then there's the title track full of references to how she wants to live that honest life despite doubts and human frailties and her own mistakes, but she never actually mentions what she might have done to not live that honest life, which kind of is a glaring issue. In fact, I'd probably prefer all these songs have a little bit more detail as a whole, but that highlights the oddness of Courtney Marie Andrews focusing on some of these themes to begin with at her age. I don't doubt that constant touring that it ages you, or that the settling down theme doesn't have some weight in country music. One of my favorite albums of 2016, Southern Family, embraced many of those tropes, but that album actually backed it up with detail, or in the case of Laurie McKenna's The Bird and the Rifle, or Brandy Clark's Big Day in a Small Town, brought the weight of years to their writing to highlight the complicated moral ambiguity often associated with small town life, and then finding that place. Courtney Marie Andrews, she gets there in spots, but not consistently for me. And in comparison with other road albums like The Weight of These Wings by Miranda Lambert, Honest Life doesn't have the same weathered texture and emotional scars that made that album so compelling. Again, I do like this, but really only in moments when the detail actually comes through. More often than not, it doesn't really quite get there for me, netting a very strong 7 out of 10 and a recommendation, but also that you check out albums like No One's Slate is Clean, one of her earlier albums, which brought a lot more detail and bite to the overall sound and ultimately rang as a little bit more compelling, at least for me. But at the end of the day, I get that feeling that if Courtney Marie Andrews wants to settle down, it might not be for long. In the meantime, definitely check this out. It's pretty good. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. You'll like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. I can't imagine many people are probably going to watch this review, but hey, if you did, leave a comment up with the poll over here. I'm genuinely curious how this is being received by her fans. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do, I'm all ears. And if you guys have any albums that you want me to cover, I recommend you guys get involved in my Patreon, which is a link over here, where 3 times a week we vote on the albums that I'm going to be covering in my upcoming schedule. And on Saturdays, you guys have the opportunity to add albums to that schedule if you're at a certain level. I recommend you check it out here for more details, but until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.